Hi, welcome to this SSRS tutorial video. This is the first SSRS video I've done, so this is going to be an introduction to SSRS. I'm using Visual Studio 2012 for this. There are later versions, but for the later versions, although there are significant differences, the general basics and the mechanics are no different. So I'm using my version of Visual Studio 2012. So SSRS is called SQL Server Reporting Services, and it's Microsoft's reporting solution. It is their equivalent of Crystal Reports, say. So to create a report using SSRS, you need to have Visual Studio installed. Depending on the version of Visual Studio, certainly up to I think Visual Studio 2017, you need Visual Studio installed, and you also need a separate installation of SQL Server Data Tools. So Visual Studio by itself gives you the options of creating Windows and web applications. But with the data tools, you get extra options, and one of them is to create reporting services projects. So in order to begin to create a report, Visual Studio install and SQL Server Data Tools. I think from Visual Studio 2017 onward, SQL Server Data Tools is already part of it. You just need to activate it, I think. But anyway, for this version, I've got SQL Server and a separate install of SQL Server Data Tools. In fact, if I go to Help and About, I think you can see it there, SQL Server Data Tools. So let's begin. Let's start creating our new report. So if I go to File and New Project, we get this window up. New project. Within templates, we should have a folder called Business Intelligence if you've got SQL Server Data Tools installed. And within here, you should have the option of Reporting Services. Now, when you select Reporting Services, by default, the Reporting Server Project Wizard will be highlighted. I don't want to use that. What that does is, it's Microsoft's kind of handy wizard that says, all right, to create this report, you need to have a data source and a data set, and this is how it should look and feel. And it asks you all sorts of questions. It's nifty, and it's kind of very helpful if you want to use it. But for this demonstration, I'm going to not use the wizard, and I'm going to start creating a new project myself. So down here, I have the option of naming a project. So I'm going to call it Training Reports. Then you've got a location here, which is automatically generated by Microsoft. You can change it if you want to, but generally they'll give you this already, so you don't need to worry about it. And I want you to create directory for the solution here so that we get a folder called Training Reports that stores all of our reporting objects. And then we click OK. Now immediately you don't see a great lot. So what you might actually see is this screen. On the right hand side, what we are interested in and where we need to begin is something called Solution Explorer. So here it is. Here I can click it and I can pin it. It might already be there. If it isn't there and it's not available, you should be able to find it in here. Solution Explorer is the top option there, so you can select it from there. But you should see it either pinned already, or you should see it on the right hand side, so you can click it and pin it. Now, a report's got to have a couple of things. So a report needs to have a data source. So what data are we going to present? It's got to sit somewhere. So a data source can be a database, it can be an Excel file, it can be a flat file. But we need to know where to go to get our data. So that's a data source. Then we've got a data set, which is actually the data that we want to use to present on our report. Then we've got a report that is actually the look and feel, the thing that people are going to see. So you'll note these two options above here are called shared data sources and shared data sets. We're going to look at that separately in a different video. So just for this video, we're going to right click and we're going to create a new report. But I don't want to choose this option. The Add New Report option offers immediately the report wizard, which is very helpful, but I don't want to use the report wizard. I want to go to Add, I want to say New Item, and it should bring this window up here. And by default, the report wizard is highlighted. So I want you to select Report, and we're going to call it Introduction Report. Reports, the extension of reports, or the letters after the dot of a file name for reports is RDL. So you're gonna see that throughout these next few videos. RDL is a reporting extension. So we click OK. Now the screen will change and we'll see a little bit more here. Now in the middle now we've got a report area where we can start building our report, and on the left hand side we've now got this thing called report data. Sometimes that isn't there. Sometimes you create a blank report and you don't see the report data immediately. You need that. That's kind of where we start building our report. So if it's not there, if you go to view, and I'll hold on a second, you need to be in the report designer area here, then go to view, and there it is at the bottom here. So if you were somewhere else, so I was actually here, I think, and if I go to view, I don't see that option. It's a bit of a quirk anyway. So as long as you select in the report area here, if you click view, then there is an option to view the report data pane there. Let us then create a data source. Now this is a data source that is specific to our introduction report. It's not a shared data source or a shared data set. It's a data source that is specific to this. So if we right click it and we choose add data source, we can name it. I'm not going to bother with that for this video. Our data source this time is going to be Microsoft SQL Server, and then we need to click edit to create a data source. You need to know the name of your data source if it's a database. So my server rather is called that, and when you put your server in, you should get the option now of selecting a database. So I'm going to select my training database and I'm going to choose test connection, and that has worked. Okay, so I can click OK to that. Now there is a gotcha with this, I think, in this version. So if I go to credentials, just make sure that it's got Windows authentication selected there. So, and then click OK. Now I want to create a data set, which is it's actually where I'm going to get my data from, which table I'm going to, or which procedure I need to run to get all of my data that I want. So if I right click and I want to choose add data set, there are quite a few options in here. We're just going to choose the basics, so we're not going to rename anything here. If we go to use a data set embedded in my report, we get the choice of selecting a data source, which is data source 1. That's the one we've created. We can now write SQL, or we can select a store procedure. I want to write some SQL. It's not necessarily the best way or the recommended way, but for this video, we're just going to write SQL. Select star from employees. Now, what you should do at this point is, if you click refresh fields, what that does is it validates your SQL. So if employees wasn't a table or a view in SQL, then when you press refresh fields, you would get an error. Now, because that is fine, if I click fields, it should now show me the fields that are in that table. And there it is. So that's exactly what I want to do. If I click OK, I've now got a data set on the left hand side with some fields that I want to see, and now within my report I can build the structure of my report. So if I right click and I choose insert, I want to then put in a table. It creates me a basic table with 3 columns. I actually want 7 columns. So if now this is a little bit funny, so generally reports will have a table in them to present the data. If I want to create another column, I need to select the report and I need to right click on one of the columns. So by default, there's nothing to right click on yet. So if I click somewhere in one of these cells, it brings up this little border on the top and on the left hand side. Now I can right click on one of the headers and say insert column to the right or to the left, it doesn't matter. So I want 7 columns, so that's fine. And also, if I want to reposition this, if I click again into my report, in order to reposition it, it's a little bit tricky. So if I click on my report, that doesn't really help me. But if I click on the top left little box there, the report is still selected, but it's ever so slightly different in that it's selected for for movement rather than for messing about with columns and rows. So now I've got this little box here, and I can grab that and I can reposition it as I want to. So I'll put it at the top here. Now you see there's header row and there's a data row, and when I hover over the data row, I get this little box here, and that is offering me fields to use to put in my data row. So if I click on this here, there is only one data set, so it presumes I want to use that data set to populate my table, which I do. So I can click ID, and when I do that, it puts ID here and also puts a header in of ID. And I want to do the same with full name. And because the full name is got a capitalized N, it presumes then maybe I don't want to have it all in one word for the header. So it puts a space between the full and the name, which is perfect, exactly what I want. Department, that's all one word. If I go to office, that should be the same. But hire date should have a space in it. Leave date should have a space in it. And then active. Now, I've created my table. I've put the fields that I want to see. Now, if I click preview, that's how we look at our report. Click preview. I should see the report with the data from that select. There it is. There's all my data. There's my header row, all of my data rows, exactly what I want to see. And when I am finished, I can go back to design. That's the end of this introductory video. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. If you've got any comments, any sort of feedback's appreciated. It helps me kind of improve my content. Thanks very much. See you next time.